And I was debating whether or not to even release any of this footage.
Well, good morning, guys. So today first thing I have to go to the auto parts store, actually go to the machine shop, and I need to pick up a couple more things. I ended up getting the pistons hung to the connecting rods. I thought that, obviously, I mean, you can try to do that at home with like a torch or something to press fit, but aluminum pistons, I don't really trust myself. So I just figured that I would have the machine shop do it. I don't know, it's like $40 or something, but I just don't want to worry about getting everything put back together and I overheated something and something falls apart, and that's definitely not something I want to do. So I'll go to that, then I guess head up to the garage, and that'll be it. So I will see you in a bit. Alright, well, already halfway there, so this is the new pistons on the rods here. So I'll drive up to the shop, hopefully get it. At least the goal is, turn the camera back around. The goal is today to get the engine assembled and maybe at least mount the engine in the car. I don't think I'll have time to get everything put back together, but that is the goal today. Yes, I am daily driving my Yugo right now. Haven't had any issues. Shop's about an hour and a half away, and I will see you there. By the way, for all the haters that say Yugo can't get up the hill, I'm on the highway and I am doing it 75. Alright, well, we're back at the shop here. Got everything dropped off, and this is basically my engine right now, pretty much in packages. So what I'm going to try to do, obviously get everything taken out, get everything sorted out, and I guess just try to put it together the best that I can. So I think this is a very good moment for a time lapse. I'll try to get everything posted back up, and hopefully when I have an update, I will keep you posted. So here's the parts. So these are the new bearings that I'm going to put in. This is actually to hook up the second tank on my UAZ. That will be the next project for Comrade's Garage. Watch out for that. I'll put that over here for right now. Now it's just trying to remember what's what. Alright, I should guess these right. I usually never have those. So first thing I'm going to do is take all these caps off, put in the new bearings, hopefully get the pistons in. I'm going to scrape off all this garbage. Basically get the oil pan back on. Try to get the head back on, get everything timed correctly. All the pulleys and everything are off for timing, so make sure everything's done, top dead center, and hopefully by the end of the day we can at least get this sucker back in there.
Alright guys, Matthew here. So basically what happened was, and I was debating whether or not to even release any of this footage. As you can see in the beginning of the video, I was kind of excited and I had some enthusiasm for the day. I did release a little like conclusion video, but something happened. My first thing didn't have a cameraman, and I was trying to record myself, and something happened with the footage, and it got lost somehow. So today's the next day, and as you can see, I'm at home. I'm not in the garage anymore. So basically, what happened, and the reason why I looked like I was taking my flywheel on and off for the last half of the video is because I literally was taking my flywheel on and off for the last half of the video. So the two main problems that I had trying to get this back on, and at the end of the day, getting everything back on is theoretically a simple job. It's literally just put part in, torque down to spec, put part in, torque down to spec. I mean, obviously, getting the engine fitted in the car would be the more difficult part, not necessarily getting the engine put back together. So two big issues. First thing, the crankshaft, the bearings that I ordered were the wrong size. I'm going to try to get a refund for that. We'll see what happens. I'm like 95% sure I ordered the right ones. I don't know if they sent me the wrong part or what the deal is with that, but they were the wrong size. I guess we have three issues. So that was the first issue. The second issue was whenever I put the flywheel on, the engine wouldn't crank. It wouldn't turn over by hand. Basically, what happened was the connecting rod bearings. So you have two sets of bearings, and there's different names for these. But basically, the crankshaft has its own set of bearings, and then the connecting rods have their own set of bearings. So crankshaft bearings, wrong size. I'm not going to wait another couple weeks to order $60, $70, whatever worth. Just get the wrong part again. So this engine only has 60,000 miles on it. I'm going to reuse the old ones. End of the day, if I ever had to change these out, it's literally just dropping the oil pan. It's not a big deal. So that's it for the crankshaft. The camshaft, I put the bearings in. These were the right size, and the engine would lock up whenever I put the new bearings in. Put the old one in, it wouldn't. Now, from what I've read and the research I've done, you're supposed to measure these. I just assumed if I use standard sizes, I would be fine. I don't know if work was done prior to this or if what the deal is or why they're not necessarily fitting. These are supposed to be standard size bearings. They even have STD stamped in the side. Don't make a joke. So they should be fine, but evidently they weren't. Again, I've never had any issues with the bearings. So I'm just going to reuse the old ones. Like I said, this is a low-mile engine anyway. And that is, I guess, the first bad news of the day. Good news is I did get the pistons in. Everything's perfect on that front. I got those dropped in. It took me a little longer than I wanted to. The big issue is when you push them down, there's like a piston ring compressor that you're supposed to use. I just have a cheapy Harbor Freight. And I did end up snapping one of the rings, but that was it. So I ordered some. I already had spares. I've been through this process again before, so it's not the biggest deal in the world, and I was able to get all the pistons in, all the connecting rods in. So old bearings, new pistons, everything's rebored over. That's where we're at with that. So basically, it was weird. So whenever I would take the third and final issue, whenever I would take the flywheel off, I could turn the engine, but when I put it on, I couldn't. And weirdest thing. And then I ended up in the book, there's two different, and I didn't even see this. The first thing said torque to spec. So I looked at the torque to Haynes manual, all the torque specs at the beginning of the book. I looked at the beginning of the book and it said like flywheel housing to block. I'm like, oh, that's what I have. Like this is the flywheel housing. I'm putting it to the block. I mentioned it. I ended up cutting that out of the video, but it said it was like 57 foot-pounds or something, which is like a ridiculous number. Everything else was 30. And I tried to torque it down to 57. I ended up snapping the bolt off in the block. So I was not happy at all. It's probably a good thing that I was videoing this, or else, because if I wasn't, you'd see me kicking and doing bad stuff in the background. And thankfully, I guess because I was videoing, I tried to behave myself better because I didn't want that footage to be shown. But yeah, I ended up breaking the bolt off in the block. Turns out there's a separate flywheel section, so there's flywheel housing, and then there's just flywheel. I didn't see that. They're not even next to each other. They're separated from each other. The flywheel is like 32 foot-pounds, which is a lot more reasonable. So basically what I ended up doing is I just went out to like Tractor Supply and bought a bunch of the same bolts. Problem is they're not flywheel rated bolts. So first thing, for some odd reason, Fiat used 22 millimeter long bolts, not like a standard 20 mil or a 25 mil. I mean, at least the thread size is the right pitch. And I'm a machinist by trade, so I'm not a mechanic at all, but I do understand threads and bolt sizes and fasteners, whatever, stuff like that. So they're not graded for high torque applications. They're not graded for flywheel. So basically what happened is when I tried to torque it to the 32, it snapped. And then I got curious. I'm like, okay, I still, like, when I loosen up the bolts in the connecting rod, I can turn the crankshaft, or on the, on the connecting rods, I can turn the crankshaft, but when I tighten them down to torque, I can't. And my, again, cheapo, which is probably self-induced, Pittsburgh Harbor Freight torque wrench wasn't repeating. So I did a little test where I would torque a bolt down and I would hear the click, and again, I would, move the thing up and down to the same torque spec. I'd crank it way more. So it wasn't repeatable at all, which tells me my torque wrench wasn't good, and I have dropped it a few times in the past, and again, it is a cheapie. So what I'm thinking happened is I was over torquing the connecting rods, so the engine wasn't able to spin freely. And on top of that, again, I was over torquing the flywheel bolts. So what I have going on is I'm going to get a new, name brand torque wrench. Hopefully, I don't have any issues with that. That'll be coming in the next couple days. And on top of that, I found the class grade for flywheel bolts, and using the length and the pitch and the size, I just ordered some generic fasteners. I couldn't really find anything specifically for Panda without paying up the wazoo, and I'm not going to pay like $80 or whatever for flywheel bolts. That's ridiculous. So it's like $6 or something. I'm not even going to add that to the cost chart just because that is kind of a self-induced problem. Same thing with the torque wrench. That's a tool. I'm not going to really add that to my cost analysis graph. So we're still in for around $600 or something like that for this engine rebuild. I did pay like $44 to get the new pistons, the oversized pistons, put on the connecting rod. I guess there's some issues with if people try to do it themselves. If you overheat it, you don't want to like anneal or temper the steel or anything like that. Plus, I don't trust myself, especially with aluminum pistons, putting them into a steel connecting rod if I melted anything or did anything stupid. So I just paid the machine shop to do that. We'll add that to the cost analysis, and hopefully on the next episode we can go through that. Hopefully this job will be done. Reason you see a wire brush in there is basically it's said to use a block of wood according to the manual to hold the crankshaft so it doesn't spin when you're doing the flywheel. So hopefully next week we can finish up at least putting this engine together. Good thing is crankshaft's in, pistons are in, connecting rods are in. I replaced the rear main seal, so that was also kind of a pain in the butt. But I do have the side plates or whatever for the engine on both sides in. So basically what I need to do now is put the flywheel bolts in, get the clutch housing. The clutch will look good. I'm not going to put a new one. I've thrown enough parts at this thing already, so I'm not going to replace stuff that doesn't need to be replaced. So get that entire assembly put together, flywheel, clutch, pressure plate, get all that done with. And I think there's a water pump, some other stuff, get the head put on. That should be relatively simple. I made a video of me tearing all that stuff apart. Intake, exhaust should be relatively simple. I have all that labeled, torn apart. Wasn't a big deal taking any of that apart, so should be pretty easy to put back on. So that's pretty much it for the engine rebuild. Like I said, I was kind of contemplating to myself whether to even release this or not. Unfortunately, when you're working with vehicles like this, or just mechanics in general, things like this do happen, and I felt like it would not be honest of me to, I guess, pretend it never happens. The first thing I'm going to do next week, I probably won't even do that on camera. I'm going to use the new torque wrench, make sure that everything's torqued to actual spec, get the flywheel on. Again, I'm probably going to do that off camera, make sure everything's done to spec, and then I will carry on with the rest of the job. I have been doing some updates to my website on UAZ America, and this is for basically any Soviet 4x4 imports. We are the only company in the United States or Canada that actually specializes in importing Soviet 4x4s, literally to your doorstep with all required registration. So we have done some new, first thing, there's a current listing page, and these are some of the current listings, and I also have added some new merchandise. So this is some cool shirts that we have. Hey UAZ Not War, and this is kind of like a Jeep. I thought it was kind of funny. Evolution of the Jeep, since they like to change brands every couple decades, 2024, which is when UAZ America started. If you want to support the channel or anything I do, this is probably the best way, and I appreciate your support, and thank you for watching.